Everybody grab your beer, raise it in the air, and say, happy startup week.
You guys do good.
Guys, unbelievable. It's so incredible to be here. It's so humbling for Josh and I. Again, we tell the story all the time. We had a guy named Jim Franklin, who's formerly the CEO of SimGrid, come down, and 2 people showed up at the event. It's like 6 years ago. And now we have hundreds of people showing up at every event. So it's unbelievable. Keep coming out after Startup Week and supporting these events, because it's you guys that drive the startup community in Colorado. We are, I think, outrageously honored to be sitting with you guys tonight. It is super exciting. I'll tell you the dirty secret. Josh ran the growth track this year.
And founder track.
And basically poached these 3 guys for our event tonight, so that's how you ended up there. That's our dirty secret. So it's going to be an incredible conversation. So instead of doing our normal intros where I read something, I want you guys to introduce yourselves, introduce your company, and since you all 3 are the founders of the company, how'd you come up with the idea? What was the original idea? So let's start.
Hi everyone, my name is Edward, and I'm one of the co-founders of Gusto. We were formerly Zenpayroll, so you may have heard of us. We recently went through a renaming of our company. How did we start?
Yeah, what was the idea? How did you guys come up with it?
So, I think there's so many different things that came together in order for us to start Zenpayroll, now Gusto. So I can't really say that there was this one epiphany moment.
Light bulb.
Exactly. I can't say that there's this one idea that was like, oh my gosh, we have to do payroll and HR and compliance. It was just living a life of witnessing so many people and business owners have problems with running the back office of their business, right? Like my parents, for example, they have their own small business, and my mom does all the payroll and accounting and insurance billing. And it was one of those things where she did payroll in a very manual way. She did it through pen and paper, wrote checks, literally through a checkbook and handed it to her employees. And I thought it was crazy. I thought this was crazy that they were doing it.
She uses payroll now?
Yes, okay. Now she does.
Gusto! What's the name of payroll?
Gusto.
I had to ask.
Yeah, and I thought it was you are doing this in a way that there must be good software out there to do this, right? In this day and age, I can't believe you're doing it this way. Turns out when we were doing some research, talked to a bunch of people, a lot of people are doing it this way, and this is actually the state of the art today. And so I can't say that's the exact reason. I can't say when I was a kid growing up and observing my mom and dad that this was what I wanted to do my whole life. But in hindsight, looking back, it became very clear, right? And it became clear not just through my parents, but through friends that were starting companies, through my previous startup before Gusto. And I guess that is one aspect of the origin story for Gusto.
Warm Denver Founders Network. Welcome for Edward Kim, guys. It's so bizarre because I was watching you on This Week in Startups just 2 hours ago.
Okay.
Stu, how did you come up with your idea?
Yeah, so my name's Stu Wall. I'm CEO and founder of Signpost. Signpost is an automated CRM for brick and mortar businesses, and we more or less take technology that used to only be accessible for Fortune 500 companies that's incredibly complex, super manual, and we make it accessible to really any business. And we automate it so it's works like magic. It's very easy to set up. So idea for me, I was in business school. My older sister was a software engineer and decided she wanted to be an entrepreneur, so she started a paint your own pottery business. So if you come to my office, I have all these really poorly painted coffee cups and shit all over the place. And I was trying to help her advertise. She needed customers like everybody else, and we did this AdWords campaign. We spent $2,000. I set it up for her. It was an absolute disaster. Not a single person came in. I felt terrible about it. I split it with her, and $1,000 for a grad student is a ton of money. And so that kind of inspired me that if a software engineer and a Harvard MBA can't do this, this is a more pervasive issue. And so I actually didn't have the guts to start it when I graduated. I went to a finance firm and kind of sold my soul briefly, and realized
your soul was crushed every day.
It was just every day. It was just misery. And I finally had the guts 6 months in. I was just this is it. I just left and bootstrapped it. So
it's amazing.
it's fun.
BFN, give him a big welcome.
So Lawrence Hester, co-founder and CEO of Fair Harbor. Fair Harbor is reservation software for tour and activity companies. Fair Harbor, or the original startup idea, was actually going to be renting boats. You know, Airbnb had just raised that giant round. I called up my brother who was out in Hawaii and said, hey, we can do this for boats. So he went and talked to insurance brokers, and they said, dude, no way you're covering these policies.
What kind of boats? Are we talking
Pontoons, those giant $1 million yachts.
Wow.
They said, no way, this is a terrible idea. So not too long after that, I traveled out to Hawaii to visit him and my girlfriend at the time. And we got off the plane, and he decided to ditch our ass and head back to Minneapolis. And so all the activities we thought we were going to do, using his friend's kayaks, his friend's boats, surfboards, etc., upped and disappeared. And so I started Googling things to do, and after about 4 hours, I put my hands up and said, this is a total waste of time. I have no idea if my reservations are going through. I'm calling these tour companies, and the lazy Hawaiian stereotype is 100% true. They don't know their prices, or they don't give a shit about what's going on. And so, lo and behold, I took my girlfriend to all the free beaches. Great for the wallet, terrible for the relationship. And we got lucky enough to go found a kayak company. And so when he graduated from school, we had him work at tour companies and really figured out that online reservations was such a small problem. It was actually just basic seat management.
Awesome. Big DFA. There's a ton of places where we can go here, and I know that I want the audience to be able to ask a ton of questions. But just real quick, to set up the stage, we called this Ground Control Major Tom because we called all three of you guys. It was our words, not yours, but we called you all three rocket ship companies. How many people, just real quickly, have you hired in the past year?
I don't know the exact number.
Ballpark.
I think it's probably about 200.
200?
Yeah, I mean, we're like 325 total, so maybe 150.
150?
60 have gone from 30 Jan 1st.
Yeah, so unbelievable. So you see why these guys are so interesting. Is you guys were startups not very long ago, and you're in the same boat as many of us, still struggling, and now you guys are on this huge trajectory. So I want to start off by asking each one of you, tell us about the biggest challenges pre-scale. So it's easy now to look back and say, oh gosh, that was easy. But was you were still struggling through that to try to find that business model that was really going to scale? Sorry. As you're trying to find that business model that was going to scale, talk about what one problem really defined and stood out in your mind as you were looking to go to that next level. So we'll go to Noah.
I think when we started, one of the big problems, and this is one of the reasons why people love the product so much, is that we have to abstract a lot of government processes and policies and tax agencies. And it's not just for the United States, it's for all 50 states plus one district in Washington, D.C. And every state is doing things very differently. Some states, believe it or not, still only accept paper, like check payments that you have to mail in. And so taking this and abstracting it away for our customers, it was incredibly difficult, right? Because every
I think
state...
I felt like just constant treadmill.
Yeah.
Solving like really bullshit, like little
Right.
problems about who do you pay at what time and what sort of...
Yeah.
Like Denver has my favorite all-time Denver tax, the occupational privilege.
Oh yeah, this is like one of the big. Denver was actually Colorado was one of the early states that we actually had done, and we had made assumptions about how taxes are because we started in California. We assumed that all taxes would be like a percentage-based tax, and then as soon as we got into Colorado, that assumption was totally like shattered, right? we had built our code with this assumption in mind,
Right.
and I can't tell you how many times this has happened over and over again.
I see so many cool founders.
Yeah.
Of the founders, who has to write a check to occupational privilege tax? I fucking hate that check.
Yeah.
I hate it. You guys are employing hundreds of people in Denver. But you have to pay for the privilege?
Wait until your customers are in Denver, you have to pay sales tax.
God, it sucks.
The really funny thing about that particular tax is the amount of time we spent on that and talking to customers and explaining it to them. working with Denver and Aurora and all these different cities that have this tax, it's all for a tax that's I think $4 per site per month, and I'm pretty sure that if you combine the effort and it's like translate that to dollars, I think it's probably more than has ever been collected for this tax. And so it was things like this that were very very challenging for us.
That's good, Stu.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in general, like from going from becoming a first-time founder, like accepting failure. Like when you're really young, like shit goes wrong all the time. Like not even once a day, like more than once a day.
Right.
And you're not really used to that. Like when you're at like a big company as a consulting firm, like you're preparing a PowerPoint deck, you're kind of protected from things going wrong. So I'd say in general, like we're iterating on the business. I was going out and selling businesses myself, door to door at the beginning. And you walk in somewhere, they'd be like, "Get out of here! We don't want to talk. We have no interest in what you have to say."
Yeah.
And that was, I'd say, pretty jarring for me. But biggest thing for us is just the go-to-market. So I think the technology we offer is an order of magnitude more powerful than what the people we're selling to are paying for it today. But we're a little bit ahead of our time in terms of people understanding that this is something they need. For a lot of these businesses, it's gone from paying for like Yellow Pages and radio and TV to now spending money on like Google and Yelp and other things that are a total waste of money. And they're not kind of yet at this point where they kind of understand.
Is it scary to be in front of the market?
Yeah.
Is it scary to be sitting there where you spend a whole bunch of money
Yeah.
to build out something and you're waiting for the market to catch up?
Yeah, and people forget that like there's a lot of startups have died that way, right? I mean, I'm sure there was someone trying to do an Uber-like concept before Uber and they failed. There was Friendster before Facebook, right? That happens all the time. So you have to be aware of it. We think the market's coming around. We can explain what we do, but it's a car ride. It's not an elevator ride. And I think a couple of years from now, it's a different story.
Nice. Thank you, Lawrence.
We have a similar issue where 70% of our market has never touched online bookings, but our biggest challenge with scaling was the fake it till you make it. My brother and I, when we started, were doing everything that we told people was being done automatically.
That is awesome.
I think day one we told our first client, actually day one my brother pitched a client with a printed out PowerPoint where he clicked a piece of paper and flipped it over and someone said yes. But on day one, confirmation emails, we told obviously our first client, how could we not have automatic confirmation emails? It was the two of us running reports to see if any payments had gone through, quickly copy pasting and sending an email out. And so our first client was a whale watching tour, and they also offered sunset cruises. And I'll never forget the owner calling us up and saying, "You all need to call up your developers. Somebody just booked a whale watch for March 24th and got a sunset cruise confirmation for June 8th. And say, "You know what, we'll get right on that." And then we quickly look at each other. Who the hell did that bad at copy paste? And so we did that for the first year. We promised everything. And so it was really difficult to take this model of the two of us manually doing all of these processes and then turning that into code and then actually being able to scale.
That's a fantastic lean startup story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they call the mechanical Turk.
Yeah, it is, totally.
Yeah, that just trying to do like, oh, totally, this is all automated.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we write software? That's hysterical. Good stuff. So, you want to go?
I have a question, but then we can open it to the audience.
All right.
And I think this mic is for the audience. Can one of you guys?
We have two. Jason's got one.
Jason's got one. Okay.
Do you want to go to? There's two mics.
There's two mics. Okay. Well, I'll ask you a question. I'm pretty interested in kind of like your method of scaling your sales process and your marketing, right? As you guys are kind of hitting your inflection. And it seems like Gusto is a lot of referral based. You guys are a lot of direct sales, it seems like. And I'm not familiar with how you reach your market. Can we talk a little bit about how that evolution has happened, what you started with, what's working today? Anything you feel like sharing that might help?
Thank you for setting up the growth question.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Let's start with
I'll start this time. So actually a year ago we only had 100 clients and there were only 2 on the mainland, and I went to Boston and we ended up hiring my college roommate who had just been on the Shark Tank. You can check out his product, morninghead.com.
I saw that.
Did he get absolutely killed?
Oh, he read through the rider to figure out whether or not they could edit him to make him look that bad.
So he got killed, and you went and hired him right after that?
Oh, absolutely.
At his lowest point.
At his lowest point.
He's not here, is he?
He
No.
totally got killed. I was like down cycling last night watching that.
Oh
It
my
was,
God, that's crazy.
It's a cure for bedhead, in case anybody's wondering.
they got all over him.
And so when we hired him to grow our mainland sales team, instead of going off and hiring, he decided we're going to try and Wolf of Wall Street this. He's going to create a script and A/B test like crazy. So he dialed more people than I've ever seen a person dial for a month and a half, and wrote out a script and then started hiring people to practice that script, and really was able to show that he could take kids who knew nothing about sales right out of college and turn them into amazing salespeople.
Wow. So you truly, you have a Wolf of Wall Street call center right now?
Oh, we've got 30 people in Boston dialing for dollars all day long.
That's
it's
amazing.
not nearly
They
as
wear
bad.
suits?
They don't wear suits. There's no midget tossing, but
Plenty of beer.
but
There we go.
I won't lie. There are penalties when you don't make enough calls, or you'll get a cup of water thrown in the face. So
I want to go there. That sounds awesome.
shots of vodka.
Right.
I think we got a question over here.
Okay, well,
Let's
go
get through
ahead,
this.
Matt.
And
Okay, man. Okay.
we'll be right back to you.
Go ahead, let's do it.
Yeah, so I mean, I was our first sales rep, and I was, probably not the best.
Damn good at it, weren't you?
I wasn't bad, but yeah. So we brought in people. I mean, I think now we have over 100 reps in 3 offices. So Austin, Denver, and New
Outside,
York.
inside.
Everybody's inside. We have an inbound. I mean, we've kind of diversified over time. So one way to describe it is it's always evolving. So we have a lot of people that are direct, contact with businesses. We have an inbound team. We have a national team that sells more like enterprise level businesses. We have a partners agency team. So we're always kind of
How
learning
are you
and iterating.
vocalized?
Anyone on any of those teams can call any business in the U.S. any category. Yeah. So they kind of have to know how to speak to a dentist and also speak to I don't know, ophthalmologist, something different. But yeah, it's been great. I think always hiring people that know. I mean, I don't know. None of our people have been on Shark Tank, but we brought in people that had done it before and kind of knew something, and that's always been one of the biggest wins for us.
Bedding cure, I love that.
Yeah, I kind of want to watch this. Do you have one?
I
even
have
know
never
what it
used
is.
it. It doesn't fit all my hair.
It's like
problem,
a shower
so.
cap that just gets your hair wet.
It's a shower cap that they have at hospitals. You just put a bumper sticker on the shower cap.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no shit. That's what it
And
was.
he didn't expect to get burned on Shark Tank. He thought they were gonna.
And then, I think the better thing is that you hired the fucking guy. That's
Listen, anybody who's willing to get their face bashed in that much is going to be great at sales.
rejection.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. Ed.
Yeah, I think for us, a lot of our early growth came from, it sounds really simple, but 2 main things. One is building a really great product, listening to your customers and figuring out what things they need, what things they want, and just build it into the product. And 2, and I think this is why people love Gusto as much as they love the product, they love the service that we provide, right? And in our industry, it's known, payroll and benefits is known to have horrible customer service, right? And so I think just at the very foundational layer, building a really great product and just providing really great service, that is really the key to
What percentage of your sales, you can tell me to fuck off. What percentage of your sales to date are direct lines from referrals? And just ballpark.
So I don't actually know the exact number. I think it's pretty high. I would
Over
say
20%?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
And I know we get a lot of customers through our accounting channel. So and if you know the space today, there's a lot of small businesses that hire an accountant to take care of things like their payroll and accounting for them. And that accountant obviously wants to use modern, easy-to-use tools to take care of their accounting, take care of their payroll. So a lot of times they use Gusto for the payroll piece, right? Now the benefits piece and workers' compensation insurance. And we get a lot of customers that they start with one of their clients and they say, hey, this is great. I'm going to move all of my clients over here, and any new clients that I get, I'm going to get them on Gusto as well.
And do you say, is that formal? Is it a referral fee, or is it just something you build a great product and they want to do it.
You build a great product. I mean, that's obviously the most foundational thing that you can do. We do have like certain tiers if they bring a certain number of clients to us and they get a overall discount on the monthly fees. So that
Yeah,
helps a lot.
I was fanboying with these guys earlier because I use their service.
I do too.
And I actually, that was a criteria for the accounting firm I used, was like, will you use Xero, do you use Zenpayroll?
Yeah.
And if they wouldn't use both of those, I was like, I'm not using you. And
Yeah.
but so no, you guys have a good service. I think we can take this question over here.
Yeah.
Actually, on that same note, so like for Signpost specifically, like how did you get the first 100 customers?
It's a great
When
question.
it's like
that's
you
awesome.
don't have a sales team, you know, like what do you do to get those first people? Did you try to go social media or were you just cold calling? How did you handle it?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I was the first sales rep, as I mentioned to me, the first like 25 or so I just sold directly. I would say I actually think that's really valuable because you get a lot of market feedback yourself. So, you know, it seems like you're like leaving the office 2 o'clock to go like door to door and sell businesses, but I would talk to them, get feedback. I signed up a lot of businesses that like I went to. So like my barber was one of our first clients.
Nice.
It was super
Like,
awkward.
hey, you want to cut my hair?
Yeah, it's super awkward.
Sign up for
Every
a
time I
service.
got a haircut after that, like he would talk to me and it's just like, I just want a haircut right now, dude. Like I don't know. And then we hired, you know, actually the guy who runs our Denver office now was one of our first sales reps. So we hired a couple of people that worked below me, even though I had no experience managing a sales team. You know, really, you know, pretty green folks that just could execute. And it was more or less for us like more outbound because we didn't have it, you know, we didn't have enough of a brand or any like kind of marketing to get people coming to us. And then over time it's evolved.
So you mentioned how you got your first 100 was sort of all in Hawaii.
Yeah, the original were all in Hawaii. It was cold calling till we were blue in the face. I think the record was 65 straight days of calls until a guy said, "You're more than welcome to finally come in." But given that they were all on this tiny island, they really couldn't avoid us. So we would show up every day until they said yes.
Amazing. How about you? Remember your first time?
Yeah, so we went through an incubator program. We went through Y Combinator back in 2012. And so one of the nice things about being in kind of a B2B space, when a lot of your colleagues are starting companies, is that you can sell to them, right? And one of the first things that they need as soon as they hire their first employee is to run payroll, right? And so I would say probably our first like 100 customers or so came directly from Y Combinator. It wasn't just our class, but it was, you know,
Yeah, the network.
it was the classes after that. Like we would announce at the beginning of each session that like these are like the tools that we recommend you guys use, and Gusto at the time was one of them. And obviously like just dog fooding, right? We were our second customer. So.
Did you ever mess up your own payroll?
So yeah, actually, one of the things that we said when we were building the product was, we're not going to pay ourselves until we could pay ourselves using our own system.
Oh, awesome! Yeah.
Right, and so
So you're trying hard.
So yeah, the first couple of tries was kind of a non-starter. Like we would run the payroll and then check our bank account 2 days later because there's long delay. That's one of the problems with moving money around right now. And then 2 days later, we're like, oh, there's no money, you know. And then after a few tries, it's like it showed up, and we were like, yes, we got paid.
Amazing.
Did you get the hooray email? You got paid, like right?
No,
from the
that
start?
came later.
My guys love that.
It strikes me, and it's interesting that all three of you guys are hyper-growth companies, and all three of you worked in a market that wasn't necessarily sexy. And you were sharing photos, and you weren't doing social media. You solved a problem that was kind of hairy and hard to solve. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah. And so, is that something that you think attributed to where you are now? I mean, it might be coincidence, the fact that the three of you, or it might be the fact that that's really the place where a potential founder might want to go. Is that true?
I think it's definitely true, but I think it's true for a different reason. When I look at the first company I started by thinking in my head, like, I really want to start a company, right? And then I started looking for things to do, right? And then I kind of, you know, do TechCrunch and just like walk around and say, what are the problems that I have all day? And what are the cool things that are going on? And then you kind of find yourself doing the sexy or kind of trivial things, right?
Whatever money's flowing to.
Yeah, or whatever was trendy at the time. I think after that experience and after a few years, I think I kind of matured a little bit and started thinking about problems that kind of foundationally existed in this world, and getting really excited about making a difference in solving that problem. And so then it became like, we can start a company to fix this problem, right? And so the thinking was almost reverse. And I think that, like, switching that around, I think has a huge impact on how successful or unsuccessful.
And Stu, you talked about this with your origin story, about sort of similar concept. Did you do, being a business school guy, did you go and do a ton of market research and look for, the biggest market trends, or was it just, hey, I want to solve a problem for my sister?
Yeah, I mean, I did like a huge deck for the business plan that's like a total waste of time.
And you guys had a big pivot too.
We had a big pivot too. So I'd make two comments there. Like one, like no amount of research substitutes for getting out and talking to customers. And you can have like just a huge deck with graphics and stuff, but like you don't really know what you're talking about until you go out and like talk to like my barber, like other people and get them to buy it. The other thing is like we did start doing something that was a little more consumer facing. So the initial version of Signpost was more or less kind of like, I think we were at some point called like the love child of Groupon and Foursquare when that was viewed favorably, which was quite a while ago.
You guys say that again. That's great. The love child of Groupon and Foursquare.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It was more or less like a platform that's kind of like competitive with Yelp, where people could post like geotag reviews of things, not like.
But
Yeah.
talk about that for a second, because that's a big market. Going head to head with Yelp is.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I'd like to think we're going to have a bigger market now. But
Right.
yeah, I think there's a disproportionate number of people that kind of go after like consumer-facing startups. There are obviously a lot of successful consumer-facing startups. I personally view them to be higher beta. Like there's a lot of risk. Like not only do you have to have a great team, great execution, like there's also like a little bit of a, factor of like do you just hit a thread at like the right time, right place, right message that kind of like takes off at the spiral coefficient. When your business is dependent on like exponential growth via a viral coefficient, which would be things like Turntable FM, blew up for a while. That not so much. Like, I know we're on Periscope right now. I know that's kind of gone up and down. Like no offense. to
It's
Periscope.
awesome, Periscope. Thank you.
Periscope is great. Yeah, I mean, but like I'm just saying, there's a lot of volatility of consumer, which I think those are obviously great businesses. There's a lot of very successful people in that category. I think what we do is a little less exciting to talk about at a cocktail party, but I also think it's a great business, and if we execute well, I really believe we can build a great company, independent of any kind of like consumer adoption, viral type stuff.
And it sounds like you guys were just riding kayaks.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Stu's comment. The one thing I will say is I'm really looking forward to the shakeout one day, because then I'll be able to finally post this article on why the people we're competing against, the number of Twitter followers they had on day one didn't actually matter. It seems to be in today's startup community that people are so focused on personal awards and how many Twitter followers you have and how many Facebook followers. How about how many clients you have? How much revenue you're generating? That seems to be a much more important metric.
Yeah, question back here, Chris.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, beautiful.
Alec, can you get this guy here?
Oh, there's the mic right behind you.
Man, what are you drinking on the job? Oh, we gotta. That guy's next. Okay.
There's a lot of stress and anxiety with being a founder. How do you guys deal with it?
No, there's not.
And how do you manage to do this?
It's a great question. Let's start with Lawrence with this one.
And honestly, I think it's when you start one of these businesses, you just have to be totally in love with it and know that no matter what, you're going to get up and love doing it tomorrow. So many times it'd be easy to just roll it up and quit. I started a crouton company before Fair Harbor. Believe me, when we hit the first roadblock, I said, I fucking hate croutons. I'm done.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So
On your IPO, I'm going to just get that to you.
what it comes down to is if you are totally in love with your idea, you'll know no matter what you're going to get through it. Obviously, it's stressful. I think one of the things I wish I had had from day one was somebody I could talk to that had nothing to do with the business. Unfortunately for me, almost all of my friends and my family are investors. So believe me, they're not the people I'm calling up to say, shit's gone wrong. But You know, if you're so in love with your idea, you'll be able to get through anything. Is honestly the truth.
It really is a fantastic question. It's one we talk about often, which is being a founder is incredibly hard and lonely at times. How do you do this?
Yeah, I don't think there's any silver bullet. It definitely for me, like it was a little bit jarring. I don't know. You surround yourself with like mentors, other people have done it before. I think there's some people that kind of position themselves as mentors that have actually never gone through it. And I think having somebody else where you can talk to that's like been a successful founder, like all this stuff went wrong for me too. Is a good feeling. Because the problem is people don't really talk about it. There's no everybody. This is like in general, but like everybody's Facebook page, it looks like everyone's life is like totally awesome. Like startup founders, even when people are about to get there's a company that's on This Week in Startups that went bankrupt like 2 days after they were on the show. Everything was going well.
Well, and that's what they say is that you ask any entrepreneur, how's it going? I'm fucking killing it. It's great. We're crushing it.
You can see it in their eyes.
And they're about to cry.
Everyone says the same thing. You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I describe it as like the most fun I never want to have again.
And you were a solo guy, right?
Yeah.
You had a team, but
Yeah. So I had a technical co-founder that I lived with that we parted ways after we raised money from Google. Anyway, so it's really tough. In terms of the to-do list, which I also think like personal productivity is overlooked, so just to address that question, I'm a huge believer in Inbox Zero, and then Getting Things Done is a book that kind of walks you through how to manage day-to-day. I've used like 50 to-do apps. None of them are great, they're all the same thing.
I seriously am the last guy in America that uses a Franklin.
That's great.
I'm the last guy.
I haven't said anything about it. Nothing's better.
You're a team. How many co-founders?
We have 3. So, and I think having a good support group among co-founders is incredibly important. I think so. Josh is the CEO. We actually went to school together. We were freshmen at Stanford, and we were the same major. We spent many hours in lab together, and just good friends. We were friends first, right? And so.
Are you still friends?
We are still really good
That's
friends.
amazing. That's cool.
Yeah. I was at his wedding this year in New Zealand, and actually, my parents are really good friends with his parents now. They hang out all the time, and I think just having that support group is incredibly important, right? And I think it also goes back to just loving what you do. Like, there's some days where like it's hard to get up. I'm not a morning person, so I'll like kind of like drag.
Well, you're a technical guy, right?
Yeah.
You don't really get going until like
typical
4:30 in the afternoon.
Exactly. So I have to get up, and I'm just like so groggy. I'm like kind of just like half awake, but I'm just walking away. I'm like, ah. And then as soon as I step in that door, like the vibe and the energy that we feel from like our team and the culture and just the excitement, like it's just like on, right? And then the whole day passes by, and it's like evening, and it's like had a great time, and I didn't know where the time went. And that's just such an amazing feeling that only happens when you actually really love what you're doing.
It's amazing. So I want to get as many questions as we can. We've spent a lot of time. So we'll go here, but I'm going to go quickly through the next questions. Go ahead.
So I think this Fair Harbor, I just might want to be your customer in Newport Beach. I will forward you.
We just made a sale. That's
There we go.
That is the magic of being the Founders Network right there. Amazing. Thank you.
Unfortunately, my question is not for you. It's
Even better.
even better. For Gusto, so chicken and egg. Did you decide to do your government regulations first, or was it like a silent or a parallel effect between developing your company and changing the regulations for payments?
I'm not sure I understand.
So you had to change government regulations, right? You had to comply, right? So how did you build that lobbying while developing the company?
I don't think you changed there was a lobbying element, but I think it's a really solid question, which is, how did you embrace that notion of being able to write a software project that went into local and state government and had to comply with a million things?
Right.
And you were the one that originally wrote the software.
Yes. Yeah, so just to clarify, we didn't really do any lobbying or change any government regulations. I think that's something that's incredibly hard.
Even harder than writing software.
But for us, I think we just got creative with it. The thing about the beauty of right now is that there's tools like HelloFax, and there's even APIs for sending like physical mail, and we utilize all these things in a really creative way to automate what has been for everyone else a manual process. So I'll use like faxing as an example. There's a lot of government agencies that don't have APIs. They only take forms when you fax it to this number. Yeah.
Wow.
And,
Yeah, that pisses me off.
yeah, and so we use HelloFax or like a faxing API to just
I
generate
didn't know
this
that was
form.
still a thing.
And it just happens without in a totally automated way. Sometimes there's one specific person. There's one person in this government agency that you need to email, right? And this is like their personal like work email address, and so you automate that too. You just have this email that goes out to them every once in a while to let them know. They probably don't even know that it's a software that they're sending the email. So it's a lot of just getting creative with a lot of the APIs and tools that are out there to abstract away the manual.
It strikes me as that all of us in business, all of us that have founded companies, there's a lot of these big wins. You figure out you knocked out a big customer. It felt like for you guys that you had a million tiny little wins.
Yeah.
These tiny little things that you guys had to overcome.
Yeah.
Is that true for you guys too, or is it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, other questions?
Other questions over here?
Right here.
Yes, ma'am. You can talk.
I have a question about the art of the pivot.
Art?
Can people
We'll
hear me?
repeat. We'll repeat the question.
Yeah. Because it's very difficult to know when you need to pivot or if you're just need to be patient because you really have to pound the pavement and struggle in the beginning. And so it's hard to know, do you just need to be patient and give it more time or do you pivot? And I know mentors are very helpful, but it's often hard to find mentors who've been where you are exactly and can give you really positive or helpful advice. So I don't know how you guys knew when you need to change the model or just keep going and go harder.
It's a phenomenal question. I'm going to cue it up to Stu because I know you, having watched This Week in Startups and talked about that. And I know you guys pivoted off a crouton company. But this idea has been fairly consistent after the crouton company, right?
Totally different.
But so talk about that moment because you guys, I think the interesting thing, and Josh and I've had this conversation about zombie companies, where you're growing and you're doing okay,
Yeah.
but you're not meeting your expectations. It sounded like that's what's going on with you guys.
Yeah, that's definitely what happened. I mean, when we were doing like our other version of the company, we had like 1,000 user-generated posts a day in Manhattan. Like we had like a lot of activity happening. But I think the answer is it's tough because persistence is definitely a quality you have to have in starting a company, and you have to be able to iterate through being told no and things not going well. And you should always be learning, but you need to be persistent. I think for me, honestly, at some point, like I knew in my gut that we needed to pivot. And there was a disconnect between when I knew that and when I actually did it, because there's so much pain. Like we had raised millions of dollars. Google at the time was really focused on like they were one of our investors. They were really kind of pushing us down this path, and it was super expensive to have waited to do that. I mean, eventually we went back to our investors, and it's easier if you don't have investors, but if you do. Luckily ours were like, we believe in you, we believe in the founders of this company, so we're going to support you no matter what. We kind of came to them with like what we learned, but what we do now is very different than what we started doing. The vision of the company has always been the same, but we took those investors that invested in the seed, that like totally different business, and they've continued to invest, years later. But it's tough. I think
It was
you all
probably a
know.
tough day though. When you had to go to the.
There were a lot of tough days around that time frame. Yeah. I mean, when I actually told them like it was kind of a done deal. Like honestly, what's worse is like pounding your head against the wall, trying to fix it. Like the biggest mistake that I made is like we kind of were hitting the numbers where we wanted to do, and there's this like fallacy where it's like, well, maybe if we just design the site like twice as good. Like if it was like a way better UX, all of a sudden like things would catch on fire. And my view now is like if it's a really useful product, people will use it. Like even when you've got two dudes in their apartment sending you like a manual email screwing up every once in a while like that. That's how you know you've gotten something. And so we made the mistake of like reskinning everything and going through this big design project. It's the same answer. It kind of pushed out the pivot a few months.
Agree or disagree either?
Totally. I think I think that's this idea of like, if you pound your fist at the wall like long enough, you can get through it. I think that's definitely the case.
Well, I think that's one of the big things about being a founder, is that you have to have this crazy ego to found a company, right? 80% of all startups fail. We know that inherently. So just the fact that you're founding a company makes you have sort of an unrealistic expectation. But then going to the point where you're knowing that you're just not breaking through.
Yeah. I think if it feels like you're just pounding your fist against the wall, I think you will eventually get through, but it is, to me, a negative indicator that what you're doing is probably not going to work. So,
Yeah, I mean,
there's always an easier way.
I always try to transition into like, not necessarily pivot like implies like a very hard transition, but like just we need to do something differently. It's like, this feels like it's too hard. Like this really feels hard. Like we need to change something we're doing. And it's not a small tweak, it's a big tweak. So let's think about what we need to do differently here. And I think the companies that succeed, like, I mean, almost no successful business, ends up doing what they started doing. Like, I think the successful companies are the ones that have the fastest iteration cycles, which are always kind of learning, making things better, making small changes. That's to me, the key to success.
Agree, Lawrence?
Absolutely. I think the one thing that's absolutely true for people who've started businesses is you are hopelessly optimistic. I think I was looking at our original pitch book and financial projections. I shouldn't be here right now. I'm supposed to be on a boat in Tahiti, never working again. But
Because you're 100 million. And
yeah,
you're two.
we're done. Someone bought us. I don't have to even think. Who knows what's going on? But we had a small pivot, which was we originally thought we were only going to work with boats. That was so dumb. We took the boat rental idea and then, we'll do reservation software only for boats. Pretty stupid. Our first horseback company called up and we said, more revenue, more money. Why would we say no? And we don't have to change the product. So a little bit different.
What's that feeling like? You're talking about beating your head against the wall, pivot a little bit, or majorly, and then kind of growth after that. Is it, obviously, everything's hard, right? But it's the path of lesser resistance, right? So is that how does that feel? I guess is a good.
Yeah, I mean, I think like just beating your head against the wall by itself feels terrible.
Brutal.
Feels awful.
Yeah.
So like I try to always transition that into like, let me kind of channel this pain into like solving it. And as long as I feel like I've paid some tuition, I've learned a lesson, it was pretty hard, but like I'm using that to move forward, you feel better.
Yeah.
And I think like the best, it's like in the book Good to Great, like the best people have a combination of they confront the brutal facts. Mm-hmm. So there's some people that are so positive they don't confront the facts that like, I'm doing something that's stupid. But then also you have to have the resolve that you'll be successful. Right. And people tend to be on either side of that. It's hard to do both. But I think doing both is what you need to be successful.
Right.
That's a fantastic question. Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, quick question for you guys, especially with the payroll software as well as the CRM. Now, so those can be pretty complex. When you guys launch the product initially, you'll say, let's make this simple and we'll add on, or do you try to go in making, let's make, here's what I really want the product to look like. Or do you start out going, here's 1.0, wait for the market's feedback, and make adaptations to it?
Really, really amazing question, because for all of you guys, I mean, you talked about your MVP being you guys on the phone sending emails, but to what point did you feel okay to start to launch it? I guess for you, it's probably when you could pay people.
Yeah. It's definitely starting simple. In fact, like when we first launched, we didn't even have a user interface. So Tomer, one of the co-founders, we had like 15 companies that we were doing payroll for. He would literally call them up on the phone and be like, what are the hours for your employees? How much would you like to get paid? And then he would run it in like from our office in our system.
Some sort of
right?
database.
Yeah, because we had not built the user interface for it just yet. The thing is that if you look at CTech, like we had the works in there, right? We had payroll and benefits, all the stuff that we're doing right now. It was all part of the initial plan, and it took us many, many years to get to benefits, which we launched recently, right? And workers' compensation insurance. And there's many more things in that deck that we're going to do many years from now. And so it's just being really patient, starting something really simple and just expanding it over time.
Same question.
Yeah, absolutely. Simple is better. I believe in, there's kind of like this false doors view of kind of selling something a little bit before you have it. It sounds like, both of these guys have done that, which I think universally, like any founder would agree with that. So I mean, when we, even now we're big enough, we can't get away with this anymore, and we're probably all in the same boat, but we would like barely have what we were, selling. And the reverse can be true, where you spend a bunch of time building something, you go out and sell it, you get feedback, and what you built is actually not what the market wants.
Right.
That is definitely going to happen. So you're better off, kind of making your best guess going out, and like the best for me, you can do a lot of surveys and things like that, but the real way to prove if someone wants something is to get their credit card to pay for it. And so the only way to do that is like get on the market. And sell.
Even though the counter argument to that is that sometimes it doesn't feel great when you go out and make a promise as a salesperson to a customer and you fuck it up.
Well, I mean, you can't be like, whether you're like, you guys are like making phone calls or, you're sending emails, you have to do whatever you're trying to get the person for.
Right.
And you could always.
Well, I mean, your shit's gonna break.
Yeah, I mean, we've honestly, you could just like give them, you could take the money, take the credit card, just refund them. Be like, look, you gave the credit card, you agreed to pay this much, but like we're not gonna charge you because, we're a little rough around the edges. So, that's the approach we take, but we used to release things that were very polished, like our threshold's gone down, and especially like brand new founders, I'd encourage them to, get out and talk to customers before building too much.
I know you guys, kind of the same question, I know you guys really work hard on your customer support and how you kind of love your customers. Same type of deal, like if your shit breaks, it doesn't feel that good. Are you still thinking MVP?
Absolutely. I think when you're starting a business, you're constrained by the amount of code you can push. And so you really at the beginning need to make a decision. Am I going to make this product really easy for my users, or am I going to push functionality? As a group, my brother and our 3 original developers, we said, I don't care how hard it is for the people that are going to use the software, let's create functionality. And they can call us any hour of any night. And since day one, we've had 24/7 customer support and have always been focused on pushing more product than pushing use. They can call us and learn if they need to. I'd rather have it be more difficult and have more functionality for the business owners than vice versa.
James.
Yeah, and James always on the phone, so back up.
Easy question for Edward. So way back when I was born, Paycheck was the first disruptor in your category. Have they noticed it? And if so, how do you think you're going to respond?
I'm sure they have. I'm absolutely sure that all these companies, Paychex, ADP, many of the companies in the space are trying to build a similar experience as we built. And that's just, anytime you're doing something great, people are going to copy it, people are going to try to follow it. And in a way that's flattering for us, it's very exciting. I think ultimately we just kind of focus on what we're doing, listen to our customers, and try to build and improve our product for them. We know there's always going to be other players in this space, but I think we just focus on what we do.
Have you guys seen big reactions from legacy competitors? I mean, both of you are in relatively blue water, as they say, but have you seen people that are legacy trying to react to you guys yet?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see direct copy from our website show up on a competitor's website. I feel it's very unlikely to be original, but I would agree that at the beginning I focused a lot on competition. I was reading TechCrunch every day, and just this kind of garbage tech news. And I think now focus on building a product your customers love and building a business, and you'll be successful. I can't tell you how many times like Google or some other big company is kind of like threatened they're going to do something similar. I used to get really nervous about it. I think now, like, if what you're doing, ideas are easy, execution's everything.
Right.
And if you're building a valuable business, it means you're executing very well. That's not something someone can come in and replicate in month. It doesn't matter if you're Google or if you're like another startup.
Right.
So focus on doing what you're doing better than, as best as you can, and don't worry so much about the competition.
For us, I read an article recently by Warren Buffett talking about ignoring the competition. And that's never been truer for us. In fact, I love that our competition seems to only think about us all day long, because they're calling our clients all day long, and we only have 5% of the market. That means that we can call the other 95%. It's a wide open place. It's so much, when you look at what you're developing, if the market's wide open, why should you really focus on your competitors all day long? And then you're picking up pennies when there are bulldozers full of dollars out there. That's what you should be focused on. Go out and solve those clients' problems, those customers' problems, and everything will work out.
Okay, just quick, because we didn't cover this in the beginning. How much total, if you can say, how much total have you guys raised?
I think around 70 to 80
70 days,
million.
Yeah, we announced 36.
36.
Just over $1 million.
Amazing. Okay, cool. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Just keep going.
One of the smaller questions, but I feel like it's a strategic move to pick the location where you want to run your business.
Ah, I love that setting up Denver. That's
Just curious to why Denver was part of the business plan.
That's an amazing question, because all three of you relocated to
Yeah,
Denver.
why aren't you in Hawaii?
Right. Relocated the entire company. Both
Yep.
of you guys have offices elsewhere.
Yeah.
That ended up not quite headquartered here, but you've got a big employee base. So
It will be bigger than San Francisco.
nice. It's amazing. Go north.
So for us, one of my brothers who might have just ditched out, he's gone if he can't raise his hand. He's still right over here. So he was actually our first mainland support member, which was perfect because he could handle all the time zones. But the real truth of the matter is when we posted a job in Hawaii, it was crickets. Or it would be people who are applying for jobs from the mainland and we know they're going to last 2 months. You post a job in Denver, you get hundreds and hundreds of qualified residents. Yeah. You can't beat that. And maybe I have no experience posting jobs elsewhere. Although we have the same experience. Our sales team is in Boston. They post a job and they're overwhelmed. Julianne sitting in the front row is stuck sorting HR emails all day long. But it really was that the applicant pool is so
How
fantastic.
have you found it here? Because you guys are, what, 6 months in?
So we opened the office a year ago, but I moved here 6 months ago because it didn't make sense to wake up at 2 a.m. anymore so that I could surf at 4.
Right.
At some point you have to give up that lifestyle.
That actually makes me sad, frankly.
Yeah, so we started in New York, not necessarily because we thought New York was a great place to be, that's where I live, and there's my apartment, but I think New York is a good city. The problem is like New York is egregiously expensive and somewhat competitive, not as much as San Francisco, but at some point we were like, look, we need to hire really young, talented people who want to work in startups. We've got to be somewhere where it's like a better quality of life for people who are working for us, and we've got access to another talent pool. So we actually did all this kind of nerdy math stuff. We looked at different markets and cost of living, education factors. But the way we picked Denver is we posted the job here, and then we posted in a few other cities. We got a bunch of applicants. We picked the two that had the best applicants, flew out. I think we interviewed people in the Brown House or something. We didn't have anywhere to go. So we wanted to seem legitimate, and our the best team of 5 was clearly here. So we're like, all right, that's the decision. So we started here. It's been a big win. It's our biggest office. The number of people now.
Clearly, it wasn't Josh and I. That would have turned in the entire wrong direction.
We did almost the exact same thing.
Oh, cool idea.
So we started. What are all the major cities that we want to be in? We kind of narrowed it down by looking at. We wanted to be in a different time zone so that we can support, our East Coast customers, so that people in San Francisco don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to support them. We wanted a place where we can get to really easily from San Francisco, so they had to have direct flights and frequent flights to that city, because we didn't want to create a separate, almost like a separate company, right? There's a lot of cross-pollination, there's a lot of people going back and forth between San Francisco and the city that we ultimately chose. And then we narrowed it down to 3. It was Denver, Salt Lake City, and Austin. And then we actually put out job postings in all 3 cities, looked at all the applicants, and we sent people out to those cities and holed up in a conference room in a hotel and interviewed them. And it was really clear that the people in Denver had the most similar values, similar culture. They're great people. They fit the Gusto kind of what is a Gusto person, right? They fit that that characteristic really, really well.
Yeah.
I just
and so
think
it was
you
like
guys
this-
can all thank us for not applying for this job. I think Denver could thank us for that job.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's great.
And so it was a hands down decision for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
A couple I see you right there. Just speak loudly.
My question is, so how did you decide to switch names to Gusto? Was there a moment you're like, we need to switch names?
All right, this is some kind of interesting shit. So you said nothing's off limits.
How did you choose Gusto?
Yeah, so
There's the whole Zenpayroll thing. And can you talk about it?
yeah. So we were obviously formerly called Zenpayroll, and I think that name served us really well for the time. We wanted a name that described what we did, right? So that people would hear it and then they'd say, okay, I know exactly what you do. And so that there wouldn't have to be like another 2 sentences after like explaining that pitch to that person. And that worked really well for us. But all along, like we had these other plans beyond just payroll, right? Payroll to us is just about, I would say maybe 10% of what Gusto will ultimately do. And so what we realized is that the name Zenpayroll, the fact of it having the word payroll in it, it has a ceiling to it, right? It limits like the brand that we can build around it. And so we found out that like actually having a name that kind of is very specific and describes what you do limits what the brand that you could build around the company. And so then began a really long process of picking a name, and we had many hours and months of meetings and coming up with different names and requirements and different characteristics that we wanted in a name. And it was an incredible learning experience for me, especially as an engineer, learning about brand and what's so important about a name. And now I think it's incredibly important, right? And I won't go into the exact details of how we came upon Gusto, but it was the one that really excited us because it embodied what our clients are doing, what our customers are doing, right? They're building businesses, they're hiring people, they're serving their customers, and they're doing things with this energy, right? And that's kind of what Gusto to us embodies. And that's why for us it was actually a really perfect name.
Just as a growth guy, it was painful. Is that a painful thing? Would you have done it sooner in retrospect?
Yes. It's painful because you have this sunk cost, right?
Right.
We had built such
brand
great
equity.
brand equity around Zenpayroll, right? People loved it, right? And so it's almost like leaving it behind. And I'm sure you can transfer it over, but But one thing you realize is like it's gonna happen sooner or later. So do it sooner than later.
Yeah, pull the Band-Aid, right?
Yeah, pull the Band-Aid.
Questions? There first, yeah, with the mic.
So you talk about like a Gusto type of person, and I know that scaling culture is a big thing, particularly with startups. A lot of us are drawn to startups because it's not this old school baby boomer type of world. It's sort of different, and you do have this sort of particular atmosphere to companies. Once you go through a big successful round, and you're going to double the size of your staff, triple the size of your staff, how is that something that you keep intact? So you don't lose it, and it doesn't just becomes a big factor.
That's an amazing question. It's one that I knew I needed to ask.
Right.
So thank you for asking. So each of you, how has it been scaling your culture? You had a culture of a few guys, each of you. And how has it been, and what's been the challenges with that? Let's go Logan.
Logan actually works for me. That's
Oh
why
my
I answered the
God.
question. So.
Man,
You smell nice, bro.
you planted some great questions tonight, man.
I think
Hey, you know what? Score is hard. Just saying.
I think the biggest challenge, and when I think back to our culture, was really we call it DWIFT, do what it fucking takes, was scaling that attitude.
Wait, say that back.
DWIFT, do what it fucking takes. Was back in the day when we were over-promising features or you name it and doing everything we could to make it happen. That's something we've tried not to lose, but it gets really challenging as you add people. Because not everybody now has experienced that time when we were really faking it till you make it. I was looking back, I think we told people last year during sales pitches that we had 80 people, which obviously is way off. And it's because the people were willing to stay up at every single hour to present this, hey, yeah, we've got 50 people answering phones at every given hour, when it was really the guy over here on my left and Jane in the front seat here, was that Dwift idea. And I think what's really scary for us is we're planning on going from 90 to 400 in the next year, is how do we keep that idea of staying frugal and being crazy? Because now we've got HR sort of clamping down on what we're allowed to do.
Midget tossing?
Yeah, midget tossing, exactly. That's out the window. Literally.
Oh God, I want to hang out at your office. Stu.
Yeah, I think it's tough. There's definitely no silver bullet. It's a lot about the people you bring on board, and once the company gets big enough, you're not going to have like the interactions that you used to. It used to be like me having dinner with 10 people every night. We'd all like talk. We had the same culture. Now it's like those 10 people, you know, doing their own thing with like their team. So I think it spreads down. Like the early hires you make and the leaders you pick are important. You can also make bad hires. Like one thing we've done before is we'll hire someone that has a great resume, very smart, not a good cultural fit. You know, we have like a no, you know, like a lot of companies like no asshole policy. People violate that if someone's like a top performer, but it can be really toxic, and we've seen that play out poorly. So managing that's important. I think also for like us, we have 3 offices, so I'm here like once a month. I try to meet with people, and then back to like the frugal comment, like I like to make a point to empty the dishwasher every day, so like people see, you know, nobody's above this. Like we're a startup, we're like super cheap, and you know, it's just a lot of blocking and tackling, but it's not easy, especially when HR gets involved.
And if you don't empty the dishwasher, it just piles up.
Yeah, I actually have to empty the dishwasher.
So culture is super important for our company, for Gusto. I think that the key to scaling it is, so I draw this analogy between culture and values. Values, and I think people mix this up all the time. Values are kind of like the set of ideals, aspirations, things that you think are right and important. And those are kind of immutable. They don't really change, right? They're kind of very much the part of the founding of the company. But culture, like, is actually the implementation of these values, right? It's all the processes and the way you communicate, and it's like frugality and things like that. Those collectively define what culture is. And I think the key to scaling that is understand that culture will constantly change and evolve, but the values should not, right? And I draw this analogy between culture and values with your company's product and mission, right? So mission is kind of like immutable. It's something that is very much part of the foundation of the company, but the product is changing every single day, right? We're making our product better several times a day because we're deploying it several times a day. And product, in order for that to scale, you have to evolve the product while keeping the mission exactly the same. And then you do the same thing with culture. Like, understand that culture will constantly evolve and be comfortable with that. You have to as you grow, but the values, like, keep it grounded in those values.
So one more.
We're gonna go speed rounds. A couple guys start.
Through the decision making when you decided to quit your day jobs and focus on your business?
Fantastic. Just a couple sentences on quitting your day job. Lawrence.
I actually was working as a consultant when we launched Fair Harbor, so I was consulting for a company in Boston. They didn't even know I'd moved to Hawaii, so I didn't quit. I worked from 2 a.m. until about 7 a.m. Hawaiian time, and then started working on Fair Harbor again, and they had no idea. I didn't even have to think about that.
Nice. Stu.
I was just really unhappy with what I was doing, and so I think burning the bridges is the way to go.
All in.
Yeah, beautiful.
I just haven't had a real job in a really long time. But what I was doing before Gusto was I was kind of independently writing a whole bunch of Android apps and like utilities to, you know, make the OS a little bit better. And I just kind of asked myself, do I really care about this? Even though it's making a lot of money, do I really care about this enough that I would spend the rest of my life doing this? And the answer was clearly no, right? And I found something that I would spend the rest of my life doing, and so that was the decision.
I'm going to take the last question, if that's okay. And I want to ask, we do this to a lot of founders at networks, which is, what advice would you give? I mean, it's tough to wrap up, but if you could give a single piece of advice to somebody that started a company, maybe has a couple of employees, less than 10, and is looking at the path that you guys have taken over the past 12 to 24 months, what advice would you give them?
I think it goes back to what I was saying about values. One of the first things we did when we had hired, I think around 7 or 8 people, and like Travis and Steven, I think some of the people in the audience here were actually part of this conversation. We actually spent a couple of days just sitting around and talking about our own personal values, right? And at the time, like, our team was majority software engineers, and you know, I'm sure a lot of them were just like rolling their eyes and be like, "Oh, great, we're talking about our feelings." And you know, as a CTO, like, I will probably admit that I was, you know, probably harboring a little bit of those feelings. But we really nailed down like our 6 company values over those 2 days. And I think, like, looking back, that is actually the most leveraged thing that we've done in the history of Gusto. And I think it sounds like a waste of time, especially when you just need to be shipping code and getting customers and making sales. But that is actually super important when starting a company.
Yeah, I think it's all about 2 things. One is product market fit. So, you know, do you have a product that customers want to buy? Do they love it when they have it? And, you know, I don't believe in building things that are like 10% better than what's out there. Like, is it, you know, 10x? Is that potentially like 10x better? Those are really the ideas I think can be the biggest. The second thing is people. Particularly like at the early stages, like, people tend to start companies with people they're friends with, and you're almost never friends with someone that's like, you know, it's almost like you need to find someone who's like the antithesis of you. Like, you need, you know, technical co-founder if you're a sales guy, and you probably are not friends is the reality. So finding the right people, finding people that are really going to take it to the next level, that's always been the game changer for us.
Last words.
I'd say 100% make sure you're focused on your customers, because if you're satisfying their need, it will work. And then secondly, from a culture perspective, make sure you're having fun. And I'll never forget, my brother and I were sitting at dinner. My brother started Fair Harbor with me, and there was his girlfriend. She said, "God damn it, all y'all ever talk about is fantasy football and Fair Harbor." And, you know, honestly, if that's weren't the only 2 things we were talking about in the fall, then something's wrong.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming and spending the night.
Right.
Guys, and thank you so much. Guys, we do this every single month. The last Wednesday of every month, denverfounders.com. Come check us out. Last couple of months of the year. Next one, we're doing startup horror stories.
Startup horror stories.
October. You guys want to come? You guys want to hear horror stories? We got 5 minutes for any founder that's got a horror story. So It's around Halloween, so we make it spooky. And then we're going to do, after that, we're going to do our startup a holiday party, not Christmas.
Well, we do a community holiday party. We invite everybody together and we buy all the beer.
Right. So it's amazing. Guys, thank you so much for coming out and supporting the Denver Startup.